So welcome aboard. Now in this episode, I'm answering your question, Citrus County tax deed sales. All right, now most sales are really auctions, but we'll get into that over the next few minutes. I'm Ted Thomas, and I've been involved in the tax lien certificate and tax deed business for over 30 years. So Citrus County is a perfect example of a small county with more than likely, when I say small, I mean small in population, not necessarily the size of the county. So they'll still have properties that they'll want to auction there, but they won't have thousands. They'll have dozens of properties, sometime maybe even 100 properties. But that doesn't mean you won't make a good deal. So right next door, of course, is Hillsborough County. Now you're going to find a much larger population, and you're also going to find out not just dozens of properties, but hundreds and maybe even 500 or even 1,000 properties could be for sale at a tax defaulted auction. So today we're going to talk about Citrus County tax deed sales, okay? Now, the local investors know a lot about the property, much more than the outsiders do, and that's why I'm constantly saying to people, if you're going to get involved in tax defaulted auction, you need to think about having boots on the ground. By that I mean you need to go and review these properties. Don't buy them just off an auction sheet or go to an online auction and buy without seeing the property. The condition of the property is especially important to you. If you're going to sell it, it's going to get sold based on the condition. So I say it's unwise to purchase a property unless you've physically seen the property, know its condition. So not only do you want to know the condition, but at the same time you can look and figure out what your exit strategy is going to be. Now I'll be right back. Okay, now these tax deed auctions, some people call them sales, but they're always going to be an auction, and it's going to go to the highest bidder. So what's the highest bidder? That means they'll have an active auction. It'll start out at probably 10 cents or 20 cents on the dollar, and then it'll go up. And as it goes up, highest bidder is the one that's going to get the property. All of the properties, when they're finished the auction, the treasurer will wipe out the deed of trust or the mortgage, so there won't be a loan on the property. So keep that in the back of your mind. When you're going to get the property, it'll come free of a mortgage or a deed of trust loan. Okay, so the county auctions are basically starting at back taxes. I don't know what they're going to finish at, and nobody does. But just know that you won't have a mortgage. All right, so why do these auctions take place? It's because people don't pay their taxes. Now, sometimes it's 100 people, sometimes it's thousands of people in a county that don't pay. When they don't pay, well, the legislature has already made the rules for everybody. And the rules say everyone pays taxes. So they have the treasurer of the county will not only levy the tax, but they'll try to collect the tax. And if they can't collect it, then they have the ability to go ahead and foreclose on the property. But they don't always do that. So in Florida, they're very benevolent about the way they do things. Now, benevolent is my word, not the state of Florida's word. Florida will allow a tax lien certificate auction. That means they're going to sell the taxes to the public, and the people can stay on the property. So what's really happening? Well, I don't know why it happened, but I can tell you this. Some people just walk away from the property. Some forget to pay taxes. Some have sickness. All kinds of things can happen. So with a tax lien sale, the people haven't abandoned the property. They're going to stay right there on the property, and then the county is going to sell the tax lien, and then that property will then have a lien, basically called an encumbrance, on the property, okay? So in all instances, what's really happening is someone didn't pay the tax, that set off, triggered an alarm at the county. The county is going to start the process of putting the property in default. Then they're going to issue a levy. And when they issue that levy, then they're going to let people know they have to pay those taxes. If they don't pay the tax, then the local county, the treasurer, will actually confiscate. They'll seize the property and they'll sell it at auction. They'll put them on a list, so you can get the list from the county or you can get it from the local newspaper. Anybody can buy at the tax defaulted property auction. All right, so the money is owed to the local county. It's not owed to Ted Thomas or a bank. It's always owed to the local county. So the legislature makes the rules, not you and I, and everybody follows the same rules. They're always written at the county records. Okay, everyone is compelled to pay taxes. In the first 2 years in Florida, the people can stay in the property. At the end of the 2 years, then they're going to have a subsequent auction. And when they have that second auction, that's a tax deed auction, they'll actually sell the property. But the first buyer is a tax lien certificate buyer. All right, so it doesn't matter who's on the property when they is there. It doesn't matter who's there because the county will move anybody that's on the property off the property if they're confiscating it. But if they're selling a tax lien certificate, the people are staying on the property. So I'm answering a question today. Citrus County tax deed sales. It's a tax deed auction. Some people call it a sale, but it's really going to be an auction. It'll be conducted by the county treasurer. Sometimes they're online, sometimes they're offline. Anybody that buys a tax lien certificate, the length of time is 2 years on a tax lien certificate. After the 2 years, in Florida, they'll have another auction. In other states, they don't have other auctions. All right, so the buyer of a tax lien certificate must wait a minimum of 2 years, and then they have to request the county do another auction. All right, the second or subsequent auction is a tax deed sale or tax deed auction. All right, so let me stop. Right here, you need to understand there's 2 different auctions in Florida. One is called the tax lien certificate auction. Okay, if you buy at that auction, you get a certificate, you don't get the property. All right, the second auction, after 2 years, is a tax defaulted auction. So we're talking today about Citrus County tax deed sale. That means it's a tax deed auction. All right, so that means you're actually going to sell the property. It'll probably start at the back taxes, and then the bidding will go up. The highest bidder will get it. I don't know where the sale will be, but it could be in the county offices, or many times, if it's good weather, they'll just have it outside on the courthouse steps. All right, so let's review. Going back and looking at small counties, small in terms of population, all right, they're only going to have dozens or 100, maybe 100 properties, whereas a large population county like a Hillsborough County or Miami, they're going to have hundreds of tax lien certificates or even thousands. And when it comes to tax deeds, they will have hundreds, sometimes even 500 or 1,000 tax deeds, which they will auction, and those properties will be sold that day, and the people actually get a deed to the property. All right, so you're kind of getting the idea. So small population, only a few properties, doesn't matter. In both places, you can get a good deal. If you understand what you're doing and know how to buy at auction, you can do just as well at a small population county as you can at a large population county. You might be, when you're first getting started, better off at a small population county because it's not so confusing. There's not so many people there bidding against you. So you're kind of getting the idea. All right, now many of the people that are entrepreneurs get involved in this business. Now, this is a business that you have to work at. You don't have to work hard, maybe 5 or 10 hours a week. But some people work on a 40-hour job, but they hate it because they don't have the freedom to make their own decisions. All right, this is a business you can make your own decision. You will have to work 5 to 10 hours, at least a month, to do your research to learn about the property. Now, I know many entrepreneurs quit their job. I always tell them, don't quit your job. Rule number 1 is don't quit your job. Rule number 2 is review rule number 1. All right, so many entrepreneurs quit. That's okay with me, but they go home and they work 60 hours, and they only make as much money they would have if they'd stayed in the job for 40 hours. So keep your jobs. All right, now everyone's going to give you advice about tax liens and tax deeds. Everyone gives you advice. Your relatives give you advice. Your friends give you advice. People that don't know anything about it give you advice. All right, I'm going to tell you there's a big difference between these two, and if you're getting old people telling you about it, young people telling you about it, you need to really think about what you're doing. Most of these people are not qualified to give you advice. You're going to have to get a mentor. You're going to have to get a coach. You're going to have to get a course. You're going to have to learn how to do this because there's a lot of little nuances to the rule. But it's not difficult to do. But I can tell you, everyone's going to try to give you advice about it, and most of that advice is not going to be good. It's not because they're bad people. It's just they don't have any expertise. So think about a coach. Think about a mentor if you really want to do it. All right, now auctions are taking place all the time. All the 67 counties in Florida will have at least one tax lien certificate major auction for the year, and then the counties can do individual tax deed auctions, which today we're talking about Citrus County tax deed sales, which is really an auction. These counties can do as many as they want. Some do it every month, but most do it at least once a year, which they're authorized to do. All right, so the property is always going to be sold to the highest bidder. All right, now this is not an arena for you to practice and learn your trade. This is a business that you need to learn what you're doing, okay? So don't buy properties unless you've had boots on the ground so that you've not only looked at the property and looked at it physically, so you know what condition it's in, but you can also at the same time compare it with other properties, and you'll be able to start figuring out what your exit strategy is going to be. All right, now exit strategy is important. what are we buying at these auctions? Sometimes we're always buying used and abused. Some of the properties are junkers, and some of them just need a little bit of a touch up and fix up, and they're ready to move into. Don't buy the junkers, but go and look at those properties. If you don't look at the property, I'm going to tell you not to buy it. The property will always go to the highest bidder. The auctioneer will decide that. If you're not paying attention, the auctioneer will go right by you. All right, the biggest mistake people make at the auction is they underestimate what it's going to take to sell a property. All right, selling the property is the most difficult thing for most people. All right, what you need to think about is how are you going to sell the property? You could basically use the multiple listings. You could use Craigslist. You could use signs on the property. You could use all the electronic sites. You could use Trulia. You could use Zillow. My point is, the most important thing that you can learn from me is learn how to sell the property and learn what you have to get rid of. Because if you don't know what you have, you're not going to be able to sell it. Now, most sellers have a difficult time when they start because they think they're going to buy a property, offer it at a low price, and it's going to sell quickly. It'll sell quickly if you market it in enough places. That's all the time I have today. I'll see you on the next video. If you'd like to get an auction list, go right below me. There'll be an auction list. Just register there and they'll send you a free list for your first month. I'm Ted Thomas.